Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle, and this is the latest episode of what I like to call New Album Spotlight, where I put the spotlight on a new prog album that has just come out, and I want you guys all to check out if you like the same kind of music that I like, which I'm assuming you do if you're watching my channel. These are albums that I love to recommend, and it's one of my favorite things to do on the channel. So if you haven't subscribed yet, I want to urge you to subscribe. If you're into the album recommendations in the prog genre, that's what I do here. I also do a bunch of other shows where I do the weekly prog news. I do a bunch of shows with my wife where I'm introducing her to new prog music. So it's just a lot of fun to be had on the channel. So I'd really appreciate a subscribe or a like on the video if you like what you see here. But today we're talking about Lonely Robot, a great project from journeyman guitarist John Mitchell, an incredible musician who's been part of so many different prog bands throughout the years. He's a member of Arena, plays guitars for them, has been with Frost as well, Kino, It Bites. He's just a man of many talents and has been a leading charge in a lot of these different groups. Great songwriter, great guitarist, great singer, just basically does it all. And Lonely Robot is his opportunity to be able to really... It's basically a solo album for John Mitchell. He's the mastermind here. He's doing almost all of the instrumentation. He's doing all the songwriting. And so it's more of his own personal project where he's able to put out his own work under this different moniker. It started out as more of a sci-fi style concept series. The first three albums, a lot of people call it the Astronaut Trilogy. They were albums that were tied together thematically. But since those three albums have come out, he released the album Feelings Are Good, which was more of a personal introspective type package that came out at the beginning of the pandemic. And now this album that I'm going to be talking about now, A Model Life, which is also more personal and delving into feelings that he's had throughout the pandemic, feelings that he's had throughout his life, really, with his parents, with, relationships he's had more recently that haven't gone as well. So it's more of a reflection album about his feelings, about what he's been going through, and it's a really beautiful, emotional album that I've really been enjoying a ton. I think it's a really great album to check out. And John Mitchell, on these Lonely Robot albums, there's definitely prog leanings. He's definitely a prog musician and has those flavors and touchstones. But I feel like there's a lot of pop influence. It's a progressive pop sort of feel, has almost an 80s inspiration in a lot of ways. And so if you're looking for something really overtly proggy and, a lot of instrumental fireworks and all of that kind of thing that you might hear on a Frost record that he's a part of or other projects, really, that's not what this is about. This is more centered on the songs themselves and what the songs mean, and really delving into those topics and doing so with some great melodies that really captivate and some big hooky choruses that I think really stand out and sound really great. John Mitchell is a master of melody and writing these really classic sounding songs that burst with energy when it gets to that chorus and you feel the emotion. And so that's what he's more expertly doing here rather than all the instrumental fireworks. But there are some really great guitar solo moments because he's also a great guitarist. So don't think that there's nothing going on in the instrumental work. It's definitely there, but I'm just trying to convey that it's not this bombastic instrumental virtuosity showcase. It's more introspective. It's more about the songwriting and about serving the meaning behind these songs. And John Mitchell has talked in interviews about his writing process and that he usually comes up with a song title first to give him a concept to work with, and then that's when the music and lyrics fill in the gaps after he comes up with this song title theme. So it's an interesting way of writing that I think really works well and makes for some really interesting topics and things that he talks about throughout the album. So really, really tasteful album with some great writing, some great themes that are meaningful, and some great playing and strong hooks. So I was really in love with this album. Going through some of the tracks on it that stood out to me, Recalibrating is a really great start that eases you into the album and into this prog pop sound that permeates the record. It has a great strong 6/8 beat, great guitar lines and twinkling piano, and a catchy hook that grabs your ear. So it really sets the stage for the type of music you're expected to hear throughout the album, and I believe was one of the main singles that came in anticipation of the release. So really cool track, that one. An interesting side note I was hearing from his interviews about the album as well, credited on the drums is Craig Blundell, who's played drums for a lot of different notable prog figures. Notably, he's playing a lot with Steve Hackett on his touring cycle, and it seems that John Mitchell wasn't able to get Craig Blundell in the studio or to be able to really do new drum parts to send in for this record because he was so busy with his touring cycle with Steve Hackett. So basically what John Mitchell did has taken drums from the past that Greg Blundell has contributed in prior albums and stitched it together to fit the songs on this album, which is really an interesting approach. So the drum work is definitely done by Craig Blundell, but it's not really new tracks that he did for this album in particular. It's basically stitched together from older songs that just fit the feel and the mood of these tracks. So really interesting when you think about that, but it really, you don't notice, you may hear that and think, oh, well, will the drums sound out of place in sections, but they all fit perfectly. John Mitchell is a master at editing it in a way that it sounds natural and sounds like the drums were created just for that track. So nothing that really takes away from the album itself, but I thought was an interesting side note that I had heard about the album. So that leads into Digital God Machine, which was a recent single that just came out this past week. Has somewhat of an industrial beat and some robotic affected vocals at the start. The chorus lays back a bit more into a more lighter feel. Once again, very catchy and hooky chorus. Basically, the song's about the keyboard warriors and trolls who hide behind this anonymous internet screen before they give their negative comments and drag people down. It's looking into the psyche of those types of people, which I can relate to slightly because of some of the comments I can get on videos, although my comments tend to lean a lot more positive, but I definitely can see how there's people out there who like to tear people down and tear things down. And it's hard to imagine why people do that. I can't imagine, even if there was a band I didn't like, I can't really imagine going on their message board, their videos, and posting all these horrible comments. I just stay away from that band's videos. It's just not to my taste. So I don't really understand it, and I think John Mitchell feels similarly, and this song really delves into that topic in a really cool, interesting way. Species in Transition is another beautiful song, a little bit more of a ballad feel, beautiful keys, great vocal performance. There's some nice beats that enter in after the first verse with some beautiful cello and electronic sounds. Great blend of 80s pop and modern prog. Really beautiful guitar solo as well. This is a great track to look at if you're really wanting an encapsulation of the theme of the album and about what you might hear from the musicality on board. It's really a great look at our inability to simply talk to each other about our issues in the age of social media and all these more modern inventions that keep a barrier up between us being able to connect. And it's basically because of these things, because of social media and the internet age, it's causing our species to transition into almost something totally different and new, going away from the connections we made prior to those advancements in technology. So it's an interesting look at that sort of thing. Starlit Stardust is another great, beautiful song. Starts a bit heavier with an incredible synth melody over top of a gritty guitar riff before it drops out and focuses mostly on the vocals. Wonderful, great chorus, great hooks, great contrast between those high energy synths and some more laid back keys and singing in the verses. Just a really beautiful song. The twinkling keyboard bits in the second half are a great touch, to me personifying the stardust sort of feeling as the title describes. Once again, it's talking about a end of a relationship and looking towards the skies for some sort of hope against that loss that you're feeling from that relationship. Island of Misfit Toys is a really quirky, interesting song with an almost electronica 80s style beat and heavily processed vocals before we lead to a soaring, catchy chorus. This one had a really quirky video of John Mitchell and another woman doing somewhat of a demented children's program. Really interesting. Check out that video. It's really, really bizarre, but really interesting. Once again, the idea of the song is about fitting in, that we often don't fit in for what we perceive we should be. And so from our viewpoint, we're set aside from others and are a bit outcasts in a way of what we feel like, should be what we should be in society. It's an interesting thought experiment. Like, what is the definition of what should be the qualifications to fit in to whatever group in society is the more popular group? That's basically just determined by society, and sometimes it's probably just something in our own mind that creates a barrier that doesn't need to be there. But what I'm trying to describe by getting into these topics is just how thoughtful they are and how it leads to further thinking and philosophical natures to questions that are important. So I find that aspect of it really great. Looking towards the end trio of tracks, there's a lot of great stuff in here. Rain Kings is a really beautiful song. I feel like these last few tracks really delve into John Mitchell's past and his fraught relationship with his father, who apparently died when John Mitchell was fairly young, and he had sort of a turbulent relationship with, it seems. So a lot of these tracks have touchstones to these more childlike nature sounds. I feel like Rain Kings, it starts with this rainstorm feeling, which already brings about a bit of nostalgia, but has this slightly warped, almost music box sound style to it that enters over the top of that before these evocative vocals come in that are very much nostalgic and dripping in this sort of looking back into your childhood. Beautiful piano comes in with some great 80s style harmony vocals before the drum kicks in to provide an effective beat underneath, and the chorus brings about a bit of optimism and some wonderful synth leads that really express that. So really this song is a great message about not being afraid to cry when things go wrong in the world. Sometimes we have to cry and process our emotions to be able to move on from these really difficult things, which for John Mitchell, I believe, is a lot to do with his childhood and things that happened to him when he was young that were really hard for him to face, and that it sounds like he's still working through even now. A Duty of Care once again starts with a bit of that music box style sound, evoking those memories of childhood. We get some heavier guitars and drums later on in the track that give a bit more weight to the lyrical content. John Mitchell, he was adopted when he was young, and this is a song where he questions the lack of love that he received from his father compared with his mother, who he felt a lot more love from, and so it brings a lot of questions to mind about, why is my father treating me like this? Why did he even adopt me in the first place? Brings about those questions about, was he the right person to care for a child if he was going to mistreat him this badly? So a really interesting lyrical conversation about those types of things. And In Memoriam begins with almost a church organ vibe, evoking somewhat of a darker funeral aspect, because this is where we're talking a bit about his father's death and how after his father died, he has to basically continue on and try to realize that his father doesn't define him, that he doesn't have to follow the same path his father went down and doesn't have to repeat those same mistakes. He can embrace change and become a new person. And so once again, we get a bit more of a brighter twinkling sort of sound in the chorus to signify that he's moving on to brighter things, to better things, and not staying stuck in those darker feels and repeating the mistakes of his father, not letting his father's nature define him and trying to move on from this horrible experience. So, and we really feel that with the beautiful, touching guitar solo that caps this piece and brings out those emotions, and a bright, almost heavenly sound, like a muted chorus of angels closing out the album. So that really brings us to the theme of the album in whole, is that it's about difficult times, having difficult relationships, difficult things happening in your past, difficult things in society that you're facing. You're facing feeling like an outcast or a misfit, feeling like technology is taking you further from your connections with people, and having all these difficult things to have to face. But there's hope and there's optimism that you can come out of those things, come out of the storm as a better, brighter person, and it's dealing with these emotions and trying to move on from them that I think makes this such a powerful, beautiful album. And it's all done so expertly with some great instrumentation, some great guitar playing, and really is just a gem of an album that I really enjoyed. Even though it's not as overtly proggy as some of my favorite material that I tend to talk about on the channel, I think John Mitchell does an expert job of really writing to the song, doing stuff that serves the song rather than doing something flashy just for the sake of it. And I think that's where his skills lie in these Lonely Robot albums. So really definitely recommend this one. Hopefully you guys will check it out and are interested by my discussion about it. Please let me know in the comments how you feel about this album or about John Mitchell in general and his catalog. So hopefully you guys are enjoying the music, whatever you've got out there, whether it's this album or other albums that are coming out, or delving into the past of some great classics. I just encourage everyone to keep listening and enjoying whatever music you have going on in your life. So thank you guys so much, and I hope to catch you in another video. Bye everybody!